Let's face it, running your own interior design business can feel overwhelming. But guess what? You don't have to do it alone. I am so excited to introduce a brand new way to get the support you need. One-on-one mentorship with me, Laura Thornton, your interior design bestie. In just one focused hour, we'll dive into whatever you need most, whether that's pricing strategies, client management, presentations, attracting clients, building up a repeat business, or just getting out of the hamster wheel. You'll get clarity, strategy, and expert advice based on my 28 years of running a thriving business and over the last decade, a seven-figure design firm. This is your chance to get real answers to the questions you've been dying to ask from someone who's actually been there and is currently still walking the walk. Book your session as you need it. There are no strings attached. You'll walk away with personalized, actionable advice that you can implement right away. One-on-one, 1-hour sessions as you need it. Head to the website or click the link in the show notes to book your mentorship session, and let's build a beautiful, profitable business that you've been dreaming of together. Welcome to the Business of Beautiful Spaces, a podcast that's specifically for interior designers and decorators. This is the podcast for designers and decorators who love creating beautiful spaces, but also know that building a profitable business is what makes it all sustainable. Hi, I'm Laura Thornton, and after nearly 30 years in the interior design industry and building a seven-figure design firm, I know firsthand how lonely it can feel running your own business. Making big decisions without a boardroom, without a business partner, or another executive team member to walk things through. That's exactly why this podcast exists. Think of me as your interior design bestie, the place you come for honest conversations, real action items, and a clear to-do list that you can apply today to move the needle forward and improve your bottom line. And if you can't get the answers you're looking for here, one-on-one mentorship with me is always available because no designer and decorator should have to figure this out alone. My goal with every episode is simple: to help you build a more profitable, confident design business and propel you into sustainable, successful future. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the Business of Beautiful Spaces podcast for interior designers. Today we're talking about a sentence that almost every designer has heard. I find this too expensive, or you're a little too expensive, or you're not in our budget or our price range. So even when you know your pricing is fair, and let's be clear, most of us undercharge, those three words can set off a spiral. Should I lower my fees? Did I price this wrong? Am I about to lose this project? And is everyone else charging less than me? And before you know it, you're explaining, you're defending, and you're discounting and trying to talk the client into moving forward. So here's what I want you to hold on to today. When a client says you're too expensive, it does not automatically mean your pricing is wrong. Sometimes they don't understand what's included. Sometimes the scope is bigger than the budget. And sometimes they're comparing your professional service with something entirely different. And sometimes they simply don't value the education or the expertise, the professional process that you are going to bring to the table. So notice that none of these problems are solved by a discount. So today I'm sharing 4 things to do when a potential client tells you that your services are too expensive. And the goal is not to win every project. The goal is to respond with confidence, communicate your value clearly, and protect the profitability of your business. So when a client says you're too expensive, your first job is to pause, not to react. Don't rush to fill in the sentence. Don't start defending your fees. And please do not offer a discount before you understand the concern. So instead, I would love for you to say something like, thank you for sharing that. Can you please tell me a little more about what feels higher than what you expected? Because I'm going to tell you, 9 times out of 10, these clients have never worked with a designer. They have no idea about how much anything is going to cost. It's just more than what they thought. So that one question will give that client room to explain, and their answer will change everything. Maybe they have an unrealistic idea of what professional designs cost. Maybe they received another proposal with a completely different scope. Maybe the fee is within their budget and they're simply nervous about the investment. And maybe they genuinely cannot afford the service. And lastly, they're just looking to save a buck. So you cannot respond to an objection that you don't understand. What is more than I expect? is an expectation issue. This is outside what we're able to spend is a budget issue. And those are two very different conversations, and they need very different responses. So here's another question maybe worth asking. Were you expecting a different investment for the design fee, the furnishings, or the project as a whole? The distinction matters more than most designers realize because clients often look at the full project number and call all of that your price, when much of that budget is going to furnishings, trades, freight, installation, shipping. Sometimes you're too expensive really means I didn't know that sofas cost that much because I haven't bought a sofa in 15 years. So the key here is stay calm. Ask clarifying questions. Listen before you respond. Confidence isn't talking faster or defending harder. Confidence is being comfortable enough to understand the concern before you try and solve it. Okay, so once you understand the concern, let's bring the conversation back to value. Clients are not paying for a beautifully finished room, even though that's how it looks and that's what people think we do. They are paying for your ability to see problems before they become expensive mistakes, for a process that is built through years of trial, error, training, and vendor relationships and problem solving. And someone who can take hundreds of individual decisions and turn them into one cohesive result, for the confidence of knowing an experienced professional is guiding and taking care of the project in full. And here's the reframe worth offering the right client. Hiring a designer often costs less than the mistakes made without one. The sofa that isn't the wrong scale that can't be returned. The renovation decision that cannot be redone. 6 months of decision paralysis, or I call it decision fatigue. But your fee doesn't just buy the end result. It prevents this long list of expensive and time-consuming errors. So now the right client may not understand every detail of what you do, but they will understand the value of the expertise behind it. So thoughtful clients will still ask questions about the investment, and that's okay. That's fine. I would too if I was making a big investment. Thoughtful clients will still ask questions about the investment, but that's fine. The difference between asking for clarity and dismissing the value of your work is two different things. And I always find a successful client and a successful client relationship will require mutual respect. So if you respect their budget and their right to decide how they spend their money, they will respect the skill and the professional process that it requires to deliver exactly what they're asking for, right? It's mutual. So instead of being defensive, but so much is included, try, I understand that this is a significant investment. Our fees do reflect the expertise, the planning, the sourcing, the project management, and the professional oversight that it will be required to deliver this project successfully. And we do all of that behind the scenes so that you can go ahead and live your busy lives. So I just added that little part in. I don't know if you need to clarify that, but my clients tend to be very successful entrepreneurs or professionals who value their time, and they don't have time to get this done. And so they understand when I say to them, well, we're working behind the scenes for 12 weeks to make this happen, and you don't see us or hear from us from 12 weeks, other than on Thursdays when we send you what I call a love letter, but mostly it's just a project update. They don't hear from us. We try to bother them as little as possible. Okay, so that is a cool thing to be able to say, and they understand it, that they understand that this is a significant investment, but these are what our fees include. And then you want to make it specific to their project with the number of rooms involved in the renovation decisions, or if this is a decorating and design job. Our fees reflect the excuse me, our fees are reflective of the coordinating, and our role isn't simply selecting the finishes and the furniture. We're creating the overall plan. We are managing the details, and we are helping you avoid costly mistakes. Okay, so the more specific you are, the more meaningful it's going to become. Because a general statement about excellent service will not convince anyone. That's expected. Help the client see what your involvement protects them from, and that will allow them to see what's going to be achieved. And remember this line, because it's hard. I don't know. At the heart of the whole conversation, clients are not paying for how long it takes you to choose the fabric or to draw the floor plan. Quite frankly, they don't care. They are paying for everything you know that lets you make the right decisions efficiently on their behalf. So if the client's budget genuinely cannot support the proposed scope, don't lower your pricing. You're going to reduce the scope. Never offer a discount because you are setting the project to be asked every single time because now they know it's negotiable. So this is one of the most important distinctions a business owner can learn. So let me say this so plainly. Your fee reflects the work, the expertise, and the responsibility required. If the client wants to spend less, then the amount of work needs to change. So you could say to them, I understand that you'd like to reduce the overall investment. So rather than discounting the work, which we don't do, we can look at adjusting the scope to better align with your budget. And at that point, depending on the project scope, you might look at getting rooms completed instead of a whole bunch of small things. I always recommend let's get a full room complete because then they'll see what transformation you are bringing to their home and their space, and they will want to use you for every room. So maybe that project happens to be in phases. The main living room areas now, we can do the bedrooms later. Maybe full service isn't the right fit, but a consultation or a design plan will still give you a meaningful guidance plan, and maybe procurement and installation management will come out and you can execute on your own. So what you're never doing is the same amount of work for less money. That is not a pricing strategy. That is volunteering to be less profitable. So language that keeps it warm and firm at the same time is super important. We can absolutely explore a smaller starting point. I would rather create a clear scope that works well for both of us as we do not reduce our fees. And that's professional, that's respectful, and it's super fair. You're in business to make money. And it's also quietly teaching the client that your pricing is completely connected to the work, not pulled out of thin air, and non-negotiable. One caution before we move on. Don't build a smaller service that you don't actually want to deliver, or one that cannot produce a good result. Not every project needs to be rescuing, because the smaller the project gets, we all know that it's still a crap ton of work. And usually those are the ones that end up draining us, not just profitability, but also mentally. So sometimes the reduced scope might be a smart decision, and other times a compromised project with the same demand expectations will be detrimental to you and your business. You are allowed to decide that the original scope is the only way that you're willing to do the work. And if they really want to work with you, they're going to figure it out. All right, lastly, sometimes the right response to "you're too expensive" is to accept the client isn't yours. Sorry, I'm getting an emergency weather alert on my phone saying that we're getting a tornado. That's concerning. Sorry, a little distracted there. You know, when it pops up like an alert on your phone. Okay, so not every potential client will value your services. So not every client will have the right budget. They won't not be able to afford you, and not every project should become a project. So, and you can exit gracefully. You can say, I completely understand. It sounds as though the investment might not be the right fit at this time. Thank you for considering us, and I wish you all the best with your project, and we're always here in the future. That's it. You don't have to defend it. You don't have to try to convince someone who's already decided they didn't see the value, and you don't have to cut your pricing out of fear that another opportunity won't come along. Because this experience will teach you. It teaches you, and it teaches a client who begins a relationship dismissing your fees that they're going to question everything moving forward. Every markup, every invoice, every recommendation, every decision. And now you're going to have to keep doing this over and over and over again because you allowed it to happen. The discount you gave, the win that gave them that win, the project becomes the least of what it costs you. So now that doesn't make every pricing decision a red flag. I don't know what would, but thoughtful clients ask reasonable questions because they want to understand their investment. And like we said, that's totally fine. The tell is what happens after you explain the scope and the value. And are they still looking for clarity? Are they still repeating and negotiating with your professional worth? And you have to watch for that differential. The right client doesn't need to understand every part of your profession. And quite frankly, once you get into that niche, they will not ask you. They will value it. They don't ask for it. Yes, they want to know how much the sofa is. Yes, they want to know how much the console and the lamps are. But they are not nickel and diming you all the way through because they understand your value and they need to respect it. And without that respect, even the best well-paying project will become difficult and mentally draining. So before we talk about your sales process, I want to know why just take 10% off is so much more dangerous than it sounds, because the math will surprise most designers. Let's say your design fee for a project is $10,000. And after your time, your team, your overhead, your subscriptions, your all the things that take to run a business, your projected $2,000 profit, so 20% for the business, that's a healthy margin. Now the client asks for 10% off and you agree. So now you just made $1,000 for the business. It sounds really small against a $10,000 fee, but that $1,000 doesn't come off your cost. Your costs don't care about the discount. It comes straight out of your profit. Your 2,000 became 1,000. A 10% cut is your profit in this scenario in half. And it gets worse. To earn back that $1,000 of normal margin, now you need to sell another $5,000 of work. So this small discount doesn't just cost you 10%. That costs you half the reason you took the project. So run your numbers, and because once you see what that discount will do, you will never do it again. You will never just hand over the discount because it's an awkward conversation. And by the way, that was a 2-minute conversation of the price work that we do properly when we do a cohort of the Profit Academy for Interior Designers. And the doors will open this September. So this is something you want to deep dive into further. Please get on the wait list because that's going to be coming out in September. But shameless plug. Now, I want to also talk about making sure that your sales process is going to support the pricing that you are presenting. So it shouldn't automatically lower your fees with every objection, because obviously you should have a sales process. So hearing you're too expensive occasionally is normal. Hearing it almost every single inquiry means something that needs attention. Maybe your marketing is attracting clients whose budget doesn't match your services. Maybe your website is underselling the level of work you provide. Maybe you're waiting until the proposal to discuss the investment level, or maybe the client hasn't experienced enough value during the sales process to understand the fee. So there needs to be a connection. If you're getting asked every single time, maybe we need to circle back and just make sure that this is being a conversation that's happening before you waste your time doing all these proposals. Because the goal isn't to eliminate every pricing objection, it's to eliminate the surprises. So wherever possible, talk about budget ranges or professional fees. A client should never reach the proposal stage and believe that they're hiring a full service design firm for the price of a few consultations. So early in the conversation, you will maybe want to talk about the full service project typically requires the furnishing investment beginning at this level and whatever that is for you. In addition, our professional design fees are based on this percentage of an invoice or this flat fee or whatever your case may be. Does that align with what you are planning? It's a fair question to ask a client before you're going to invest in spending time with a proposal. So, and by starting communicating value long before the proposal arrives, you have to explain your process. Help them understand the planning and the oversight that's involved. Talk about how you manage decisions and how you prevent mistakes. Because the principle here is that when a client receives the proposal, the number should not be attached to a service that they don't already understand. Price only feels expensive when value hasn't been communicated. So now for the part of this episode that most of you will need to hear, and I say this with love. Sometimes the client hasn't said you were too expensive. You simply decided they were going to think it. And you prepare the proposal, you look at the total, you waive some fees off already because you really want to win it, and you have some discomfort. So you reduce the fees before anyone has seen it, and you trim the project management hours, and you underestimate the time, and then you throw some extra work in at no charge. Then the client accepts immediately, and the project becomes super quietly but knowingly unprofitable. And the problem was never that the client refused your price. The problem was that you never gave them a chance to accept it. You negotiated against yourself and you lost. So the discomfort that you feel doesn't mean the pricing was wrong. It usually means that you need more confidence communicating your value. So before you change a single number, please ask yourself 4 questions. Is the price based on true scope of time required? Hopefully you're tracking and have analytics and data to support that. Does it account for the overhead, and is there profit built in? And does it reflect the expertise and the responsibility that is required to do the job? Is it consistent with the level of service being provided? And if the answer is yes, and it's presented clearly, the client is allowed to decide whether it works for them. Do not make that decision on their behalf. Okay, one more thing about how you carry yourself in this conversation. Because when someone says you're too expensive, avoid anything that sounds defensive or apologetic. Not, I know, I'm sorry, I could probably work on that. Not, I worked really hard on this proposal. Don't start comparing yourself with cheaper designers. Don't suggest the client doesn't understand quality. You can be confident without being dismissive, and the client's budget is real to them. And your job is not to shame them for it. Your job is to explain the value, clarify the options, and decide whether there is a good fit. Professional confidence sounds a lot like this. I understand the investment is significant. Let's look at what is included and determine whether the scope aligns with your priorities. It does not sound like panic. So let me put it all together. The next time the client says you're too expensive, I want you to try this. First, thank you for being honest. Can you share which part of the investment feels higher than what you expected? Listen to their answer. Really listen to them. Then you can say something like, our fees reflect the scope, the expertise, the planning, and the project management required to complete this work successfully. If the scope is beyond the budget you've explained, happy to explore whether a smaller phase or a different service would be a better fit for you. I do not want to reduce the fees while keeping the same amount of work and responsibility. The response does four things at once. It acknowledges the client, it invites clarity, it communicates the value, and it protects your business. And if the project still isn't a great fit, you need to decline respectfully and move on. All right, this week, put the last three proposals that you presented and ask yourself some honest questions. Were your fees based on the true amount of work required? Did the client understand the value before the proposal arrived? Did you discuss budget and investment early enough? Write down your answers. And I also want you to write down what your response will be the next time you hear you're too expensive. And if you practice saying it out loud, which I do this in the car before I go places, it will come off naturally. It'll roll off your tongue, and it becomes a script that you can use over and over and over again. Well, hopefully you don't have to, but if you can in the meantime. Okay, so when a client says you're too expensive, pause before you respond. Ask them what they mean. Reconnect the pricing to your value and your skills, your education, your expertise, and your professional process. Adjust the scope rather than discount the same amount of work, and be willing to recognize when the project simply isn't the right fit. You do not need every client. You need the right clients. The right clients understand the professional interior designer is an investment, and they have the right to ask questions. Absolutely. They have the right to review the numbers. Absolutely. And make thoughtful decisions, but they respect the expertise required to create the result that they are paying for. Your business cannot become profitable if every objection leads to a discount. Your pricing needs to support the service that you're promising, the team that delivers it, and the company that you're working to build. So before you go, a completely free way to support this show is to leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify or anywhere you listen to the show, and tell us what you love, or share a pricing conversion that you would love for us to cover, or a conversation that you would love to hear more about. Your review helps other designers find the business of beautiful spaces for interior designers, and that is our goal. It helps us help other designers become more profitable. Okay, thank you for spending time with me this week. I appreciate it. Keep creating beautiful spaces, keep building better businesses, and I will see you next week on the Business of Beautiful Spaces.